So the market recently has been extremely volatile and I suppose sporadic. So the last quarter of 2018, first half of 2018 was really good and the last quarter was terrible. It was actually the worst quarter in the markets in 10 years, so the worst since the GFC. So I think investors went into Christmas being really nervous and thinking everything was going to keep diving, and literally sort of at the turn of the new year, the market's had one of its greatest runs in the last few years. I think the market is up sort of 10 to 15% in 3 months. So the change and the actual 180 in investor sentiment has been almost like nothing I've ever seen before. A lot of people suggest that change has been on the back of US rates and Fed policy. I think that's got something a little bit to do with it. Potentially there seems to be more stability in the US government. But I think, as always in the Australian market, it tends to look offshore and to the US specifically for guidance. And we've seen a big rebound in both the NASDAQ and the bigger indices, the Dow Jones and the S&P 500. So I think that really has given investors a lot more confidence in the market over here and has really driven, I suppose, more of a buy-side mentality towards the stock market. The Cyan Fund is very kind of, I suppose, stock-specific. We only own about 25 stocks and we often have a lot of cash. But being long only, the fund really does sort of, I suppose, follow the markets broadly in terms of the indices, although we think with a lot less volatility because our investments tend to be fairly conservative, certainly at the smaller cap end, and with that cash, our I suppose returns tend to be a little bit tempered. So whilst we had a slightly negative last quarter of last year, it wasn't nearly as bad as the overall market. This year, so to date in 2019, our fund has actually risen, but not quite as much as the broader stock market. So we've kind of tempered the results, but I think that's what we're happy with. For us, we don't want to be overly greedy in terms of the stock market. We don't want to be as volatile. We want to just take small steps forward as much as we can and not go backwards too quickly. So we've been happy with that outcome. Yeah, look, I'd say the Cyan Fund has actually handled the volatility in the market pretty well. There's a couple of reasons for that. I suppose we run quite often a bit of cash in the portfolio, which tempers the investment outcomes a little. We also have, we think, a less aggressive portfolio than a typical sort of small cap fund. Our stocks tend to all be revenue generating, not highly geared, and a little bit more defensive. But we've still obviously been, as any long only fund has been kind of, I suppose, a little bit moved around by the market, such that we had a negative last quarter of last year, but we rebounded in line with the market this year as well. So the results, I think, have been acceptable.